This is the Asia Dating Podcast, where we talk about dating, relationships, and sex with Asian girls. And I am Red Pole Q, and as usual, I'm here with
McConnell
and
Kane Vast.
And today
we're not talking about Asian girls.
Yeah, that's right. Today we're not going to talk about Asian girls. Normally we do, but today we're going to talk about the manosphere, and as a result of this of all of the scandal that's erupted around Will Smith and Jada Pinckett-Smith.
It's like this, yo. This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name.
Jada Pinckett-Smith, as
Rollo
Tomassi says.
Now, I just want to say that, in general, we don't really care about this sort of stuff. And so we're not actually going to talk that much about the actual scandal because, that's whatever. What we are going to mostly talk about is the manosphere interpretation of what happened between them. Because for us, that's kind of the interesting thing in terms of the mindsets that guys are, getting these days from what used to be the flourishing pickup community, but is now degenerated into something entirely different that is far less helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
So, for starters, Rollo Tomassi used to run a blog, and maybe he still runs it, called The Rational Male. And he wrote a book called The Rational Male. And it did very, very well. I read it maybe a year or two ago because a lot of the guys that came through to do programs and whatever had read it. And they were talking about it. So I thought I should read it so I would be able to know what they were on about and I could better relate to them. And a few of the guys are really into it, right? So I think you know a few of the guys who are really into The Rational Male, right, Kane?
Yeah, so I think about half the China group has read it and really love it. We, of course, know the red pill philosopher, I think his full name is.
Yeah, that's right, the red pill philosopher.
Yeah, he's a real big fan. And most of them, I guess, really like it because a lot of the stuff in there aligns with what they believe to be true of their experience.
Right. Now, for me, I'm not that big of a fan of a lot of this red pill stuff. So for those of you who don't know, the manosphere is a collection of sort of men's movements. It's a bit, extreme to call them movements. Maybe trends is better. Trends that started on the internet, and it includes pickup culture. It includes structured game, natural game. It includes I guess we should explain all these things.
Yeah, that's briefly. What I was going to say. So structured game is basically the idea that you could use that there is a pattern to interacting with women that leads to a romantic sexual experience, and that there's a variety of things that you can do. It could lead to one night stands. It could lead to a long-term relationship. It could lead to multiple long-term relationships, which was abbreviated as MLTR, but recently, for whatever reason, has fallen into disuse. And so there was this idea that there was this structure, that underlay the courting process, and that if you understood that structure and you built up if you understood it, then you could develop things that you would do and say in your interactions with women that would hit all of those important points and therefore drive things towards sex and relationships faster than was traditionally done. And I think everyone on this call can attest to the effectiveness of that approach, both in terms of increasing the quantity and in terms of increasing the quality of the women in your life. And also and not only the quality of the women, but the quality of the relationships you have with those women, right? And structured game also is one of the most misunderstood
it's come to be one of the most misunderstood concepts in, you know, the entire like men's self-improvement area and the pickup, you know, what pickup it has eventually evolved into.
Right. Absolutely. Can you explain how?
Yeah, I think because once RSD kind of came forward and they kind of led the movement towards quote unquote natural game. And once they started pushing that forward, what happened was that because of their marketing efforts, that company, RSD, and also a lot of other pickup companies, kind of natural game pickup companies, let's say, they kind of made structured game look very bad because they sort of had to compare what they were doing, which was, you know, predominantly direct improvisational game, let's say. And they had to make that look like what you should be doing. And to do that, they had to kind of take all of this legacy stuff that actually worked really well. And they had to say, oh, well, look, you know, you don't want to do this stuff. You want to do what we're doing. And this is the same as, you know, what any marketers will do is they'll say, oh, you know, don't do this other stuff. Do what I'm going to teach you. Right. So, you know, I think what basically happened is that they took certain concepts from structured game and they misinterpreted them either on purpose or because they don't understand those concepts. And I think there's plenty of guys out there who are instructors who actually just don't understand what structured game really is. And it's just a misinterpretation on their part. And then, you know, they kind of that carries forward into their teaching.
Right. So one of the things that's important to understand about structured game is that along with teaching kind of the structure of what happens, which, you know, in layman's terms is something like, you know, go and talk to girl, do stuff that makes the girl interested in talking to you more, then find out about girl and let her know that you think she's pretty cool too. Then get to know her, take her to some place where sex can happen, and then have sex with her. That's basically the structure in layman's terms.
Yeah.
And along with that, it was they used to give out what is called routines, and routines are basically particular ways to accomplish each of these goals. So a guy would say, "Oh yeah, you know, to you know, as an interesting story that a girl really liked, I told her this," and another guy'd be like, "Oh, cool." And then what happened is that at the time, a lot of guys, because they're, you know, lazy, obviously everybody's lazy, they would, instead of coming up with their own stories and figuring out for themselves what would fit into the structure, they would just lift that exact same story and reuse it. So so it's unclear to me exactly how rampant this was, but there was this idea, at least, that it was rampant. Although in my little experience in the West, anytime I used one of these things or I brought it out, I never had a girl who was like, "Oh, I've heard that before." I've never had to happen, and not until the Pickup Artist TV show came out. But before the Pickup Artist TV show, I never, you know, had the experience of any girl knowing any of those kind of traditional old school routines.
And I think a lot of guys who kind of talk badly about structured game, you know, their argument seems to be, oh, well, these guys are all using the same canned material, and they refer to it as canned game a lot of the time. And really, there is no such thing as canned game, actually. I mean, all that is just you using someone else's shit. And it's like, that's not what any, like, Mystery or any of the old school PUAs, that's not what any of them actually told people to do.
Right.
They would give them these kind of like training wheels. They'd give you some routines.
In fact, that's what Neil Strauss calls it in the game.
Yeah. So they give you some material that you could use, because as a total beginner on maybe your first night ever out to a nightclub in your entire life, you don't know what to say, and so you need some material to work with. And you know, then the idea is that by using that material, you see it work, and then you're like, oh, okay, and then you can sort of derive what the pattern is, the general pattern for that material, and then you can do some improvisational stuff that fits that same pattern, and then take what works best and use that yourself. And it'll be unique to you because you're the one who developed it.
Yeah, and in fact, it's not so much that you derive the pattern. I think that they teach you the pattern underlying the story. But the thing is that at that time, people would go, oh, that would never work, or they wouldn't necessarily believe that it could work, because back then pickup wasn't really a thing. So as a way to convince guys, they would say, okay, here, just go and do this. And the guys in a training, and the guys would do it, they'd be, oh my God, that works. And then they're like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, right? So I think it's actually more about that. And then the idea was, okay, now that you understand, now that you believe that it really works, and now that you understand the underlying patterns, and now that you understand what it looks like when it works and what kinds of stuff works, now, go out and keep doing this stuff, and then you'll come up with your own material.
Yeah.
In fact, that was a big deal, was like people like to come up with new stuff all the time, and they'd share it and be like, oh, I did this and it was cool and this worked. And that was like a big part of it, was like trading routines, kind of like, like some skateboarders getting together and like showing off their tricks that they learned and being like, oh yeah, I figured this trick out, or I did this, or, any kind of group like that coming together. Yeah.
And I actually think one of the best analogies is the comedy community.
Oh, yeah.
And, there's like, you have improvisational acting or improvisational comedy, right? Where it's just like you're kind of just making it up as you go along. And then you have stand-up comedians. And stand-up comedians, all they're basically doing is just building out a routine. But it's like they're trying to find the funniest material, and they're trying to structure it in a way that it builds really well over the course of their set. And the comedy specials that you hear, like the ones you watch on Netflix or, you go to see live by the big stand-up comedians, those were developed over years and years and sometimes decades of work, where these guys are going to these really small comedy clubs that are only known in the comedy scene, and they're just testing all this shit all the time. And then they're picking the stuff that hits the hardest, and they're putting it into their kind of master routine. And then that's what gets turned into, the comedy specials and the live events that are drawing all these people. And I think Pickup, done really well, is very similar to that, where you're going out and you are doing improvisational stuff, but then you're taking the improv content, you're picking the stuff that hits the best, and then you're like, okay, I can use this again. I can use this again. This is working really well. Let me put this in my kind of my stack of routines. And there's always, for anyone who follows the comedy scene, there's always people who are critical of other comedians biting other people's shit. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to take inspiration from these people, but to just like bite somebody's entire routine, you're not supposed to do that. And I think it's the same thing with Pickup. You got to take inspiration from it. You got to develop your own stuff. And so I think that's one of the biggest misunderstandings about structured game, and that's why in Pickup we've moved towards this in this direction, where it's like the accepted way is this mostly direct improvisational stuff.
Right. So even originally in the structured game era, you could say, there was always this understanding that there was inner game and outer game. And outer game is, the things that you do when you're interacting with girls. And the inner game is about like your mindsets and how you think about dating and relationships and sex and all of that stuff. And these were divided. And basically what natural game came and did is said, oh, all this outer game stuff is really stupid, and and it just makes you a robot, and you want to be an authentic person. So what you should do is just do this inner game stuff, and then if you just do that inner game stuff, then you're going to naturally be able to get girls because you think like in the right way that attracts women.
Yeah, and I think this is actually really important, like kind of way to transition into the development of the red pill philosophy and like incel culture and stuff, because basically what happened in the early days of Pickup was you had this very kind of structured and scientific approach. And I mean scientific in the sense that you test things and you find, and you're kind of like testing your hypotheses and you're writing about it and people are critiquing it. And it's it has this very kind of scientific approach to it. And the fact that everything kind of devolved into this authentic, being authentic, getting rid of that scientific methodology and just like kind of just being natural and just saying whatever you want. It kind of went back to the days before Pickup. because that's kind of what dating advice was like pre-pickup. It was like, oh, just be yourself, you know, just be cool, you know, yeah, like put on deodorant, like clean your room, and like just really basic advice like this. And I think that's why it's so easy for guys to critique the pickup community now. And they can say, oh, well, you know, incels can be angry, and they're like, oh, that doesn't work, because they never saw what pickup actually was at its peak.
Right.
Because they're like, oh, well, you guys are just attractive, so of course you can just say that stuff and it works.
Right. So we have to explain what incels are, but we'll get to that in a minute. So I think the next thing that happened when, and I'm not even really sure. So even in the early days of pickup, there was this idea, you know, the Matrix was really popular in like the late 1990s, early 2000s. And so that was taken as kind of this idea of having this awakening that, you know, that Neo has in the Matrix, was sort of taken in for a lot of things. And one of them things that it was taken into was with pickup, because guys would learn some pickup techniques and they would be like, whoa. And it'd be like super amazing to them to suddenly see the world in a different place. Because previously, you know, they would go, you know, whining and dining girls and trying to be super nice to them. And then they, you know, realized if they used pickup techniques that they could, that instead of having to do that stuff, they'd have girls, you know, begging to ride the D. And so that was kind of this transformational experience. It's like taking the red pill in the Matrix. Now, somehow, and maybe you know, I'm not really clear on how this happened, but somehow this concept got diverted into something very different. And maybe it got diverted because of the types of people, because, you know, originally pickup was all single guys or divorced guys who were already divorced.
Yeah.
And maybe it was as pickup got to be more mainstream, guys that were still married started to read it, maybe. And so that's what happened. I'm actually pretty unclear on how it shifted.
So my theory about this, and this, you know, is probably only partially correct, but I think that when you get, okay, so as the internet got bigger, right? Because in the beginning, in early pickup days, it's like the internet was still pretty small. So anyone who found pickup, they had to actively seek out those resources. And so there's a lot of intent behind them seeking it out. So it's like, it was usually guys who were ready to make some changes in their life. Now, as the internet has gotten bigger, you know, a lot of people are just browsing the internet casually, and there's not really a lot of intent behind what they're looking for. And so you just have a more normal kind of person reading this stuff. And when you have more normal kinds of people, you know, most people don't want to actually make changes in their life, and they don't want to actually have to put in the work, and they don't want to, because I mean, learning pickup it takes time, and you have to actually put in effort, and you have to go out and do a lot of uncomfortable shit. And it's especially uncomfortable when you're like an introverted guy who, you know, was a loser for his entire life. And, you know, most people just aren't going to want to do that. And so it's a lot easier to sit at your computer and just kind of like talk theory. And, you know, the pickup artists used to call them keyboard jockeys, but that's not really a term anymore, because that's kind of what everyone is in the manosphere.
Well, I think that's just what everyone is, period. It's not,
yeah,
you know, just that's
true,
just,
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's an important point, which is that previously pickup was about, so the red pill shifted things away from guys going out to engage with girls to guys sitting around and talking about what girls are like. And some of it was based on, because even back in the early days, there were guys who did pick up and then they felt like really bad about what women were like. Like they started to be like, oh, you know, I didn't know women were like this. I thought they were really, and then, you know, I thought they were like nice and sweet. And
in the game.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's a part where Style, kind of like halfway through the book, where he's like, oh, you know, women are nothing like what I thought they were like.
Yeah.
And he didn't realize that until he was able to have that like all these rapid encounters.
Right.
And he was able to look at these patterns and be like, holy shit.
Right. So for whatever reason, while some guys are just like, cool, yeah, great, you know, I'll just fucking do this shit, there's a whole bunch of other guys who were like, oh, and they just get unhappy and like, and kind of angry and disappointed. Now, I can understand for like, you know, so this is where I was saying earlier that I think that as maybe more married guys came into it, because they sort of felt that now they understood why they were having the issues they were having. but they were already kind of stuck. Whereas previously it was like only guys who were in a very actionable position. And as McConnell was just saying, who wanted to take action because they were like, yeah, I want to fucking get this shit sorted. And now it was like guys who maybe were, just sitting around going, oh, now I can't do what I thought I was going to do. I thought I could just be like this and then that would work out for me. But now I'm learning that it won't work out for me. Woe is me. And then you have some guys that are married and they're like, oh yeah, that explains why things aren't working out the way that that they should have. And I feel really duped and, taken advantage of and, all of this sort of thing. And essentially, go ahead. Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Yeah. Just jump in.
A few things. Just very quickly on the red pill, blue pill thing. The red pill is choosing to actually open your eyes and engage with reality, whereas the blue pill is choosing to live in delusion, to live by all these rules that are based on a bunch of things which aren't true. And traditionally, taking the red pill in terms of women is accepting that Disney is not correct, your parents not correct, society is not correct, everything that you are told, everything you see, everything you experience is a lie when it comes to women. And a lot of men can't handle taking the red pill in that regard. Now, I do think, as Red Pill Q is referencing, this has been somewhat bastardized, whatever, you guys know the word. That's the one. English bad. So I do think that this has been somehow misused over time because you've got a bunch of people who, I guess, aren't purists in terms of pickup and have entered the community for a bunch of different reasons. But originally, the major block for most guys in terms of meeting women and why they would need to learn pickup, one was their mental concept of how women were and how that is not actually how women are. And then two, their hard skills in terms of how do they make themselves valuable to women and attractive, and then how well can they go through the process of attracting and meeting and dating and relating with a woman. So I'm kind of trying to cover a bunch of different things here that I think you guys have just mentioned. But one really big thing in particular that was referenced, I'll bring up before I forget it, is this. Originally, pickup was very much like an underground community of people who wanted to work on this particular skill. And Young Cub, aka McConnell, aka whatever else, he referenced that it was comparable to a comedy routine in terms of like a lot of the processes you would use. And yeah, I mean, I think that's quite accurate. I think because of how pickup's been portrayed in the media, there's a lot of weirdness out there in terms of how it's perceived. So I think that one of the greatest, most well-known pickup artists, he got a bit of a bad rap, and that also made pickup kind of look bad, which the other pickup artists exploited. So Mystery would walk around being a bit weird, and he'd be a bit weird because it makes him stand out, and you could get a particular sort of girl who's going to go for kind of eccentric, rich guys. So that sort of image hasn't done a good job. So you combine all of that and various sorts of bad press over the years, because basically women have to be seen as the good ones and men are the bad ones, and that's just kind of how it is. So because of that, I think that pickup has had a bit of a downturn in a bunch of ways, and you combine that with Tinder and men having greater access to women than they ever have before in the history of humankind.
And also I'd like to point out that on the flip side, women having more discreet access to men also, right? Because that's a part of the reason why, guys are, there's these guys and like they'll like meet a girl on Tinder and they'll message her and then she'll just come straight to their house and bang them, and they'll be like, oh, I can't believe these women, how disgusting they are. And it's like, well, just women weren't in a position to do that previously. They had to be concerned about pregnancy. They needed to meet through a social situation where lots of people would know about it. And so it wasn't like, and they, they maybe they lived with people or they lived with their family or whatever. whatever, so they couldn't just like leave their house, magically appear at some dude's house and like bang the shit out of him and swallow and then just go home like nothing ever happened. And so this idea was that women's nature was people's idea of women's nature was constructed in a constrained environment where women's options for behavior were where their behavioral choices were constrained, and now they're not constrained in the same way. And so people don't, they thought that it was a women's nature thing, but actually it's not a women's nature thing. It was more about the environment that they were in and the limitations.
Yeah, and I think people really don't look at the environment and how technology is changing everything, and they don't take that into account. They're kind of just like, oh, people are like this, and it's like, well, no, people are like that when they have access to this kind of technology, and that creates an entirely different dynamic than what social life was like for hundreds of thousands of years.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of a weird situation because the greater access women have to men without any risk for their reputation,
also just really quickly, I want to point out there's a lot more single men than there used to be because all the guys would get married before, and now there's a lot more single guys out there.
So I think that pickup is almost more necessary now than it was before, because you've got a lot of people now who, although there is greater access in terms of Tinder and that, like there's less of a barrier in terms of starting a conversation, everybody can do that. So before you had this great setup where if you just had the balls to go and approach some girl you thought was cute, I mean, most guys wouldn't, because they'd come up with excuses or they'd feel unconfident or whatever it was. Whereas now any retard can kind of download Tinder and put on some bullshit photos and just start messaging chicks. And yeah, I think it's a big problem.
Definitely.
It's a very big problem.
Definitely a big problem for everyone involved.
Yeah.
So the red pill was primarily a Reddit community. It still is primarily a Reddit community where people sit around and muse about the nature of women, and they just sit around talking about how the nature of women isn't what everybody thought, and how all these guys are being taken advantage of. And let me say, I do think that the way the laws are set up in Western countries, where men are responsible for kids and for taking care of their wives in almost no matter the circumstances, I do think that is a serious problem in the West. So I can understand some of the anger that guys have, guys who got screwed over trying to do everything right, and then their wife leaves them and takes all their shit, and I certainly understand that part of it, and I can see why married guys or guys with kids are pretty unhappy. And even there's laws that if you raise a kid as yours and then find out later that the kid's not actually yours because of DNA testing, the precedent is that you're still responsible to pay for those kids. So obviously guys tend to think that legacy is and that the idea is that they want to invest into their own offspring, and so the fact that the courts have set it up in such a way where it's not about you at all and it's only about the well-being of the kids and the moms is pretty unfair. And so that brings us to the men's rights groups, the men's rights activists. So then this kind of offshoot, I think, of the red pill was these men's rights activists who are pretty much about trying to change the laws around this stuff, because they know that men get screwed in divorce settlements, in terms of custody laws, in terms of alimony payments, and all these things. And so that's another branch of the manosphere, although I would say it's one of the relatively small branches. It seems that most people are either doing pickup or bitching.
Yeah.
And there's not too many people that, like, the men's rights activists are actually trying to do something also, but they're trying to do something on the legal side. So that's kind of the smallest group, I would say. The problem with the men's rights activists, of course, though, the problem that they come up against is obviously it's not in women's interests for the laws to change, first of all. And secondly, it's not really much in the interests of the governments for things to change either, because, one of the biggest suck on welfare payments is single moms. So they don't really want to have to pay for more moms. So it just makes sense for them to continue to just like extract the money from these guys and be like, well, dude, you kind of fucked up, didn't you, by marrying this chick? Next time, don't marry, a fucking train wreck, or not even marry. Don't knock up a train wreck.
Yeah. I mean, I think like for governments to want to change this stuff, you would have to see like pretty harsh statistics of guys of birth rates going way down and just like that kind of wrecking things. And then it's like, okay, well, why is this happening? But you'd have to have the stats to back that up. And,
right.
It's kind of unlikely that'll happen, in the short term.
Right. Yeah, I agree. But I mean, I think certainly, especially, on the custody side, that's probably the worst aspect for guys because, they have these kids that they want to see and that they have to pay for, but they're not like able to see them and have like as much influence over them as they would like. So, it's pretty ugly. I mean, I've seen a few guys over the years who have been divorced and not able to have the kind of access to their kids they want, or have their ex-wife talking bad about them to the kid, and I've seen it. Well, here in Asia, I know of at least one case where it's the other way around, where it's the mom who kind of got booted out. Because, once again, so this is one of the reasons why, I would say things are kind of screwy in the West. In Asia, it could be the husband actually that gets the kids. It sort of depends. It's not so clear cut. And possibly that's because there's a larger kind of extended family element as part of it. So if you're part of the husband's family, then, usually his mom will be around, his sisters will be involved, and that sort of thing. Whereas, in the States, and in Western countries generally, you'll be on your own. So that's the men's rights activist part of it. Now let's talk, and this Rollo Tomassi, he's kind of one of the leading figures in the red pill side of things. And interestingly enough, well, I think it's kind of interesting. The red pill is one of the problems, I think, with red pill thinking is that one of the reasons they're so angry is because they're really, really wedded to the traditional nuclear family structure. Well, it's not that traditional, but the nuclear family structure of the last 100 years or so. Yeah. So one of the reasons they're angry is because they see that as being this great thing and they see that being eroded. And so actually one of the other things that happens is a lot of these red pill guys are also part of the sort of extreme conservative movements. And so a lot of them are sort of anti-immigration, and they think that the reason all these changes are happening is because of these foreign influences that are coming in and wrecking the American way of life and all of this stuff. So, so on the good side of the red pill, there are guys who are just like, yeah, that's how it is. So, you just have to like kind of understand that so you like don't end up in a bad situation. And then on the bad side, you have the ones being like, women are terrible, the country is going to shit, and these damn immigrants are wrecking everything, and
Yeah, I think before, because we're definitely going to talk, at least I'm definitely going to talk a lot of shit about the red pill community and on this call, but I just want to say that I do think there's a lot of good mindsets and tools as a part of the red pill communities on the internet. So I do think they're there. Like if you go, I think I've read the on the red pill wiki, or the red pill Reddit has a wiki page, or I guess the red pill Reddit got banned.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, this was like a big deal. It got banned a while ago.
Is this because of the right wing conservative stuff?
Yeah, who knows? I'm probably. Yeah. I don't know the exact story behind it, but it didn't get deleted though. I think it just got frozen, so you can't like create new posts on there. So they made like alternative communities.
Oh, is that where the black pill comes in?
Well, that's a different...
And apparently there's a purple pill, too.
Yeah, those are all different communities. They're kind of derived from the same, like...
Right.
But anyway, what I was going to say is that if you go to the red pill, the kind of the frozen Reddit group, they have a wiki page, and that has a bunch of resources like posts and useful stuff. And there's some resources in there that are pretty good. Like I read them, there's one that talks about like classical and operative conditioning, operant conditioning and classical conditioning. And it talks about using that in your relationships. And, there's some material on there that's quite useful. But the problem is that's that material, you read it once and you're like, okay, this is pretty useful. I'll go use it. But then it's a forum, right? So then there's all this discussion and no one's discussing that stuff. Right. They're just like talking about, they're just being angry basically. Yeah. So I think as long as you go into those communities and you take the useful stuff and you kind of use it as tools, then it's good. And as long as you're kind of like making your life better, that's good. You just don't want to get stuck being an angry guy on the internet that just like talks to other angry guys.
Right.
And is just like trolling everybody.
Right.
And I think
that's a big part of this trolling aspect where, there are guys who do go and do the traditional thing and then they're like, fucking idiot. You're stupid. He's going to get screwed.
Yeah. And and another part of the problem, and this is the problem with any internet community, is that it's such a closed off bubble and the thinking becomes very narrow because there's, it's like an echo chamber basically. And they don't let a lot of outside influence creep in. And, that's a problem for that's just an internet problem. As the internet gets bigger, the communities get more and more closed off because they can have, huge amounts of people that all think the exact same thing, no matter how wrong it is or incomplete it is.
Right. So then we have another group called MGTOW, MGTOW, and that stands for Men Go Their Own Way, or Men Going Their Own Way. And basically, this is kind of an offshoot of the red pill, where it's guys who have decided that after taking the red pill, they think that women are the devil. And so the best thing you can do is just stay away from them.
And become a monk.
Right. So
that's
the extreme. Yeah, that's the extreme version, is to become a monk. The other version is just don't take women seriously and just use them for sex, but don't get involved with them beyond sex. Don't develop any kind of emotional attachment to them. Don't let them. Definitely don't let them move in with you, and definitely don't get married or have kids with them.
Yeah. And one of the funniest parts about this to me is that these guys are like anti-feminists, right? But it's like they're doing the exact same thing that extreme feminists do, where they're kind of like, extreme feminists are like demonizing men, and like the MGTOW, like the really extreme MGTOW guys, they're doing the exact same thing on the reverse.
Right.
But they're like, oh, these feminists.
Right.
But it's
right. Well, it's also funny because without feminism, they wouldn't be able to do that in the first place. Like, it wouldn't even be an option. They'd have to be married if they wanted to get any action. But now they could and let me say about MGTOW, I think that I think the MGTOW seems to have been primarily something that is divorced guys. And so essentially they're divorced guys who, got burned, and now they just advise young guys how like terrible it can be. And the problem from my perspective with MGTOW is they don't say, okay, look, if you want to get married, this is what you should do. This is how you should set it up. These are the things you should make sure you have in place so that you don't get screwed. They just say, oh, the nature of women is that they're gonna screw you over and you're gonna get fucked. So just stay away from them. And I just find that it's just really disempowering from my perspective, and I think it's naive. And it's just oversimplified. It's just lazy. It's just people being fucking lazy.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's kind of my issue with it. Now, I don't think all MGTOW guys are like that. Some MGTOW guys are just like, women are they require time and time and money, not necessarily because you have to spend money on women, but because, you generally speaking, you're going to go out, being social costs money. Okay. So as an outgrowth of being social costing money, women are going to cost money. money. And so I think a lot of them are just like, okay, well, I have other things I'd rather be doing. And so they just do those other things. And these days, because of the way things are, you don't really meet women organically as much as you used to. Well, actually, it's probably not that. It's probably just because you're older. So, you know, people used to like meet women in like high school and university, and there are these social functions to like get you married. And now we don't really have those. So now the only way to meet girls is, you know, Tinder and other apps, and go out and approach, or maybe from work or whatever. But if you've basically decided,
hold on.
Yeah, go for it.
Hold on. There's no going out and approaching. It's called street harassment.
Oh, right. So you can still approach girls in Asia.
You can't go out and talk to people on the street.
You could talk to guys.
It's fucked up.
Yeah, sure, you could talk to guys.
Well, it depends. Does that guy identify as a girl or a tranny? Because then it's street harassment.
Well, that's true.
Fair point.
That's true. Okay, so be careful with the guys in a dress, or even guys with long hair.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. They could morph into a tranny at any minute.
Oh, man. So I think that, you know, for those guys, it's just like, okay, you know, I really have to go out of my way and put in, you know, a lot of time and effort into dating and finding women. So it's easier just to like not do that and just like do my own thing. And I think that that's fine. I don't have an issue with those guys at all. But I think that's kind of like a small minority that aren't posting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the most important part of like of all of this is that, you know, if you like come across these communities and you take stuff from them, it's important that you're trying to set up your life so that you're happy and you're not angry. That's the most important, to me, that's the most important thing. Is it's like, if you're going into these communities and you're just getting angrier and angrier, that's like not, like, do something else. Like, just try and like do stuff that's cool and like fun.
Unless you're getting angry that these guys are wasting their time doing this.
Yeah, I definitely, that's how I feel. That's how I feel. Definitely. So,
yeah.
Do you have something to say, Kane?
Yeah, so with the whole MGTOW thing, I actually go and read the MGTOW forum on Reddit quite often, maybe once every 2 weeks, I guess.
Oh, interesting.
And the reason I read it is because one of our guys was a really big fan of MGTOW for some really confusing reason. And it's really quite I read it just because it's, for me, I have a lot of trouble understanding those people.
Yeah.
And it's quite weird because it is all just a bunch of guys saying like, oh yeah, women are terrible and I have a better life now because I bought this car instead of losing the money to a chick. And I don't know. I mean, the internet, as McConnell commented, there's all these different places, and they all are kind of echo chambers, the same group of people who want to validate their own beliefs. So, I mean, I understand that aspect of it, but I read it just because of, I don't know, it's just these people and their mindset about this sort of stuff is very strange. So I try to understand that. The other kind of really funny thing, though, is that on Reddit, things don't get banned exactly, or at least to my knowledge, they don't. They get quarantined.
They can get banned. The Red Pill community got quarantined, and that's when it's just frozen. But
MGTOW's also quarantined, and that means they have no people in the community. No one's joined.
Right.
People can still post there, but nothing else really seems to occur.
Right. It's like to stop the community from growing any bigger.
Interesting.
But subreddits do get banned. They do get shut down. Like, there was one, it wasn't
Fun with Chickens.
You mean the Donald got banned?
Did it get? I haven't been following that. I don't really follow it.
I don't follow it either.
Yeah,
but
people have been trying to get that one banned for a long time. But anyway, one of the pickup communities got banned, actually. So there's the seduction one, which is the longest running and biggest pickup community on Reddit. But there was another one called, I can't remember what it's called. It was like something pickup. And it was like kind of a reaction to the seduction community, because the people who ran the new one were like, oh, these guys aren't talking about pickup anymore. They're talking about all this other stuff. And they were like, they're not talking about what works. And so they started this new community, but that new community got banned because, you know, it went against Reddit's, I don't know, policy. I don't know exactly. I can't remember, but they do ban communities. Yeah.
So what did you get out of the reading the MGTOW? Because I've never really read them. I've just heard about it a lot from Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap is a nickname for one of the guys
And
in
Red Pill
our
Philosopher.
community. Oh yeah, and the Red Pill Philosopher.
Clearly.
But the funny is that the Red Pill Philosopher, he's like super happy about his girl that he got now, right?
Yeah.
And his life situation is really actually quite good.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and actually, Quantum Leaps is pretty good too.
Yeah, right.
They're both good. I mean, that's the funny thing is that but I think one of the funniest parts about Red Pill Philosopher is that one time I remember we were talking to him and he was saying something, and it was something that like he was complaining about like the way things are. And we're like, yeah, but dude, look at you. You're doing really well. So it doesn't really like, clearly it's not like that. And he was like, and then I said, yeah, man, you really sound like an incel. And incel, like you said, we were going to explain this term. Yeah. So incel is short for involuntarily celibate. And these are like really extreme guys on the internet who basically they can't get girls, and instead of doing things to try and change their circumstances, they just complain all the time.
So the incels and pickup artists they're not the same thing, and they weren't related to each other.
Yeah.
There was a website before called puahate.com, and that's where all the really dark, kind of fucked up people would congregate.
Right.
So that's kind of where the incels were born, and there was a really famous one called Elliot Rogers.
Yeah.
Who went and I think gunned down a whole bunch of people because he's a fucking wanker.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's really funny about that is that the whole media coverage was, oh, here's this guy who hates women, but he killed more dudes than he did girls.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so I said to Red Pill Philosopher, man, what you just said sounds like you sound like an incel. And he said, honestly, I've got a little bit of incel in me.
He was a recovering incel.
Yeah, a recovering incel.
Right. Divorce did wonders for his penis.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's like an American thing, but to me, the engagement I see with people getting into with incels and then with MGTOW and stuff like that, it seems just like the lean on politics that Americans seem to love, because I don't know, I mean, you have to be really weird to be an incel, and it based on some of the people I've met who are fans of MGTOW at least, I mean, it's not like their lives were actually bad or they really did avoid women. They just liked this idea of having a group that was like against the feminists that they could kind of like push back against.
Yeah.
And it's all really confusing because there were pickup artists who would talk in the early days. They'd talk about bang feminists, and they love feminists.
Right.
I mean, they said that feminists were just down to bang, and they didn't want to get into a relationship, and they were like, "This is great,
Yeah,
fantastic, no strings,
right?
Great.
Yeah."
Actually, one of the things that I like Kane, I read some of the incel forums sometimes because I think they're really funny, and I think and it's really unfortunate actually, because I think the people who are now on incel forums are largely the same people who would have found pickup in the old days, and they would have just gotten their life together. A lot of them, not all of them, right? But a lot of them. And I think it's actually kind of sad because now I feel like I can't meet as many of those people because I think they're the funniest. Like they're like the people those kind of weirdos who actually get their lives together end up being the coolest people.
Right.
And it's kind of a shame that, you know, those guys aren't coming into the pickup community and like they used to and actually doing something positive with their life.
Right.
And I remember, like, I watched my friend, one of my friends from high school showed me this like mini documentary about these incels, or they like some like, I don't know, some filmmaker like did like a mini documentary. She like interviewed all these incels, and I was like watching this and I was like, holy shit, this is just like me in high school with these guys. And they were really funny. Like I was laughing out loud watching this documentary because they were like, it was like they were really hilarious people, and it's like sad that they were like just so angry about things, because if they weren't angry, they'd be pretty cool people actually.
Right. Yeah. So you know, okay. So let's talk a little bit about the incel community. So Kane already brought up about PUA hate. So that's kind of how it started. It was these guys who claimed that they tried to use pickup artist techniques and it didn't work for them, and so became like, you know, so they couldn't get laid. So that's really how it kind of started. But then as it grew, it became its own community where people started there. So before it was like PUA, failed at PUA, started to hate PUA, became incel, right? That kind of was the pattern. And then now it's people just go, a lot of people just go directly into the incel from the beginning.
And one of the things I want to point out about PUA hate is that actually the original, so PUA hate was actually, I don't know if it was started by, but one of the main members on that forum was 26 from the game Extra Mask.
Right.
And he started it, I think, or I don't know, somehow the forum got kind of developed out of his podcast. And originally, so on his podcast, which isn't around anymore, but he used to basically just kind of like talk shit and make fun of a lot of the because I don't know, after the game there was all these PUAs like marketing themselves and like trying to make money in PUA, and he would make fun of them kind of from like, oh, you know, this guy doesn't really know what he's talking about, or like it's just like a marketing thing, and they were making fun more of like the business aspect of it. And so because obviously, you know, Extra Mask did game and he did well in game and he had like a successful kind of gaming career, and then, you know, so there was this forum, and I think originally it was meant to kind of make fun of the business aspect, kind of like if you would make fun of internet marketers who teach internet marketing.
Right.
You know, but it kind of like devolved into just like, okay, well, let's hate on all of pickup.
Right.
And then, you know, like you said, these offshoot communities. So I think like the original intentions was not at all what it kind of ended up being.
And I think part of the reason why this happened this way is because previously, if you got into pickup, then you would pretty quickly join a pickup community and you would find guys to go out with. And so then you would be going out doing pickup. And what happened, I think, as the internet became bigger, is you had less people going out and doing pickup, and you didn't have these what were called lairs at the time that were like all over, right? There used to be, you know, lairs in all major cities and in a lot of smaller cities too, where they would have weekly or monthly meetups, and guys would go there and they'd meet other guys who were like good with chicks, and then they would like go, oh, okay, and these guys would sort of take them out, and so they would have these positive experiences of going out and gaming in this constructive community environment. And as things moved more on the internet, they stopped to have these they stopped having so much in-person contact, and so guys would just read stuff. They would maybe go out and try it. It didn't really work for them. Maybe they would ask for some help on some forums, and maybe they would get some help, but also that's less common these days too. And then they would be upset because, you know, it wasn't really working for them. So I think that was another aspect where there's no longer this community where guys are going to like help you out. Because I think a lot of times, for example, guys back in the old days when guys were doing, and this is also part of the natural game shift too, because prior to natural game, it was much easier to bring in like some new person and just say, oh, here, do this, say this, say this. And then, you know, like, let's say if I'm out, and, you know, this will happen today, if I'm out and I'm with like a guy who's new, and I'm like, go out and I like approach a girl and she's got a friend, because, you know, normally if it's a night environment, they have some friends, then I could bring this newbie guy and I could tell him a few things to say to the friend, and he would do that, and he would get like he would have like a good interaction with a girl, maybe for the first time in his life ever. He would have like a good interaction, and he's like pretty happy about that. But I think that sort of stopped happening as pickup got to be a lot bigger, and there was this natural game thing. And so part of the incel problem is that they were more brought up around this idea of natural game. And so because of this natural game idea, it was sort of like you have to be a certain kind of person to be able to get girls. And so they were like, well, I can't be that kind of person. And so there's this whole concept of the Chad. and the Chad is like the kind of it's like the jock, popular high school guy persona.
Yeah. It's basically Vision.
and so that's kind of, so there was this idea that the whole idea of natural game, in that you want to become the kind of guy, or as RSD used to say, the sex worthy guy. And there was only like kind of one model for sex worthy, and it was like, yeah, this kind of, you know, sort of degenerate party boy, or like frat boy game, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
And so they were like, okay, well, I can't be a frat boy. And so I guess I just, and I can't be a frat boy because I'm not tall enough. I don't have I'm not athletic. I'm not like cool. So they were just like, okay, well, I can't. And then on the extreme side of incel, then they're like, okay, there are the guys that are like, okay, I'm going to become a Chad. And then some of them do start like working out a lot, which by the way is not very helpful for getting girls. And also and then some of them even, or a lot of them maybe even go and get a lot of plastic surgery done because they think that the reason they can't get girls is because they don't have the right genetics. They don't have the right male testosterone markers naturally that attract women. So they have to get that so I consider this to be an outgrowth of like this natural game movement, because before it was pickup was a bunch of nerds. And they were a bunch of nerds who could go out and interact with girls in effective ways. And then it became, oh, you can't be a bunch of nerds who go out. You have to become this cool guy.
Yeah, that really made the community a lot worse.
Right.
In my opinion.
I totally agree.
It just made it a lot less fun. This is what I was talking about when I say like those incel guys are probably way more fun to hang out with than the the natural guys who go out now.
Right.
Just because they're more they're more wacky. They're more fun.
Right.
They don't care as much about they just want to get girls. They want to they want to have all their weird hobbies and have all their weird mindsets and also get girls. And I think that's really cool. Yeah, and I remember it's kind of strange to me that the incels think they're like, oh, I tried that stuff and it doesn't work. And I think to myself, I looked like those guys too. I had long hair, I was fat, I dressed badly, I had acne, I looked terrible when I first learned about pickup. And I remember I just went out and tried some basic, I just opened some girls with some basic opinion opener. And I remember girls were actually talking to me and I was like, holy shit. And I just think did they even they must not have even tried, because I looked terrible and I was still getting results. So yeah, it's so weird that these communities could exist.
Yeah.
And it's probably largely because no one does anything actually,
right,
or takes any action.
And also the influx of more mainstream guys, right? I think that's a big,
for sure.
That's a big aspect because
they're looking at that and they're saying oh, that's the only route to success, and I can't do that. Whereas when I was I watched the old Mystery Method DVDs, and you see some of the guys in that seminar room, and you're okay, definitely I can do this.
Right.
Some fat nerdy guy with glasses, and he's I was talking to these two strippers.
And I think there's another, and the mainstream aspect I think is also important, because even now, when it comes to guys who like structured game, a lot of them are engineers, which was a lot of the pickup community in the beginning.
Yeah.
And the engineers have this mindset of, okay, how can we get this to work? Let's figure it out and let's work on it. Let's break it down into pieces. Let's analyze each piece and then let's see how we can do it. And I think that that's not a typical way that people look at things in the world. And so as a result of that, I think that's really why we don't have the why structured game kind of lost its appeal, and why there's been this shift towards natural game and incels, because there isn't that same sense of, okay, if we break this down and figure it out in parts and pieces,
right,
then we can find something that works. It's just oh, that's how it is. That sucks.
Yeah. So you want to talk about the Will Smith stuff?
Right. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, and it's fine if you don't know, this is so not important.
Yeah.
Essentially, Will Smith and Jada Pinckett-Smith they had a YouTube, did a YouTube video together where they talk about how Jada banged some dude 4.5 years ago. And essentially what seems to have happened is the internet has exploded with people talking about how Will Smith is a beta cuck. Now, if you don't know what a beta cuck is short for cuckold. So cuckold traditionally
For all the incels listening, we don't need to explain this to you.
Cuckold means someone who gets cheated on. Essentially, a guy who gets cheated on is a cuckold. And the reason they call it that is because the cuckoo lays its eggs in other birds' nests, and then the other bird raises their offspring for them unbeknownst. And also this other bird is bigger than the birds it lays its eggs in, so the other bird often like kills the other ones, or they die because they can't get enough food because it's like monopolized. But anyway, so that's where the term cuckold comes from. It's a very old term. It's in like Chaucer, for those of you who are into reading that sort of thing. Okay, but anyway, so cuckold, and so now for short they say cuck, and beta is, I think, pretty mainstream now, but just in case, the idea is that humans operate in a social hierarchical structure, and that guys, can be rated from alpha to presumably omega. Okay. And, so in any group of guys, there's going to be the guy who is the highest value male, and he would be the alpha male. And then you'd have like the beta male, and then, you'd have like presumably the gamma male, and et cetera, et cetera. But in the world of the manosphere, basically you're either an alpha or a beta. They don't include the rest of the Greek alphabet.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that's to me so incredibly funny and just so wrong about the red pill communities, is that their thinking is you're either alpha or beta. You're either red pill or blue pill. And there's nothing. It's like you're one of those two things. It's such like black and white thinking. It's so bad.
Right.
Because
I don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kane.
I don't know, McConnell. That sounds pretty fucking beta.
Oh, let's just say it's not the first time I've been called a beta cuck on the internet. And it won't be the last.
Yes. It's true.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it's such a, like, when you think that way, you miss all subtlety and nuance. And that's like, it's just the wrong way to think about things, because your model is just so narrow, and it's so wrong most of the time, because the world doesn't operate like that.
Right, absolutely. It's super interesting because, and this is where I think Jordan Peterson's ideas about how the cool thing about humans is that there's so many hierarchies. So there's this, this is true, right? I mean, you could be the top violinist and you get all the violin girl pussy, right? And then you can be the top comedian and you get all of the laughing pussy, right? So there's all these different. Now of course you can say that there are some hierarchies that are sort of bigger or better than others. So for example, the actor hierarchy, clearly you're going to get. Well, I mean, I wouldn't even argue. It'd be hard to say that you would get better pussy than the violin guy, because some of those violin girls are pretty fucking hot. If you ever been to Juilliard, and I had a lot of like Asian American friends, like Korean Americans who were from New York, and their parents made them go to Juilliard to like study the violin. And I mean, those were some nice quality girls. I mean, if I could have been the best male violinist at Juilliard, I mean, I would have gotten some top shelf pussy. That's for sure. And maybe I never would have learned pickup. But the point is that, as an actor, there are more women that are available to you, right? Or as a musician, as a pop musician, there are more women that are available to you than, as a top, orchestral violinist. Okay, that's true. Right. and or like, yeah. So there are different hierarchies but I mean, really, it's not like I'm sure that if you were like one of the best violinists, in the world, or even in the country, whatever country it is, even if it's fucking, I don't know, like, Albania. Wait, does Albania exist still? Yeah. Okay. Albania. You're probably still getting some pretty good quality puss, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's like, you don't have to be at the top of the global hierarchy. It's like, and you really wouldn't want to be.
Right.
All you need to do is like, you don't even need to be at the top of the local hierarchy, really. You just need to be like pretty good.
Yeah.
there's some threshold, and you need to just be beyond that threshold, and you'll do pretty well.
Right.
And like the amount of work it takes to get to the threshold in most hierarchies is pretty low, actually. Yeah. So I think there's all these guys who are like, they think you need to be like the top of the top, and and actually, and about this, the Will Smith thing, the internet is basically, the manosphere internet is basically saying like Will Smith is a beta because he let this happen, and it's like, dude, Will Smith is fucking way more famous than you will ever be. Like, he's accomplished way more. Like, all these fucking keyboard jockeys who are sitting around like jerking off to porn and like talking shit about Will Smith, it's like, Will Smith is way better than you. He's accomplished way more than you ever will accomplish.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't think you should be judging Will Smith right now.
Right. Yeah.
It's just so funny to me to see that.
Yeah. I mean, really. I mean, he was like, he started off like as a hip hop artist at a time when hip hop was like really like pretty still quite niche. And, then he became, then he got his TV show, and that really made him popular. And then after that, he got into movies, and then he made some of the biggest fucking movies like ever. And he's been doing movies for like 30 fucking years now or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like,
and I think I really, we were talking about this, Martin. I really think of that Bill Burr thing.
Yeah, I was thinking about Bill Burr too.
Yeah, it's so where he says, if what is the term he uses?
He says.
That guy's stupid. If that guy's stupid, what the fuck am I?
Yeah, like if Will Smith is a beta, I'm like, dude, I'm like beyond Omega, like whatever you call that.
We need to add on several more alphabets till we get to you.
Yeah, exactly.
We need a hierarchy of alphabets. So that I can be the lowest on the lowest on the last alphabet.
And so there's this video, this really long, like unnecessarily long and excruciating video by Rollo Tomassi.
Did you get a chance to watch some of it, Kane?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it.
Okay.
And so he's basically just tearing down Will Smith.
Well, he says it's not a teardown.
Yeah, so he says he's not tearing him down. Now, this is one of the funniest. There's so much funny shit about this video, because he says stuff like that. He's like, Will Smith. I really like Will Smith. I grew up with Will Smith. Blah blah blah. But then he just proceeds to just talk about how he's like a beta.
Well, no,
he's not. Blue pill alpha.
Right. So, I thought that was pretty interesting, this blue pill alpha concept.
Yeah.
So, do you want to? Does one of you want to talk about that or explain when he's saying there, or should I do it?
You can go ahead and roll with it.
So typically in the manosphere, whenever any guy doesn't have the world bowing before him and always at all times, they say, oh, he's actually a beta. That's like what they say. I don't know why, but that's just how it goes. It's just like you do like one thing, one misstep, and it's like you're beta. And so Rollo Tomassi is saying, oh, well, okay, you have to understand that, that given Will Smith's accomplishments and where he is in the hierarchy in terms of his success, that he's not a beta, which obviously, right? Obviously. Yeah. But the reason why he's getting this bad treatment, or why he is, because he's blue pill. So blue pill is
grew up in a blue pill world,
right? So blue pill is the red pill is when you understand the true nature of women and society, and red pill is when you understand the true nature of women and society, and blue pill is when you live in the matrix, essentially. That's kind of the idea, and where Cypher goes,
Why, oh why didn't I take the blue pill?
And he's like, oh yeah, I know this steak isn't real, but it tastes really great, right?
I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious.
That's kind of like the blue pill mindset, except you don't even know that there is another way to be. And so the whole thing is that he really that Will Smith, because he buys into the standard model for relationships, then he's in a position to be taken advantage of by women because he doesn't understand women's true nature. That's the basic concept. And so one of the things that I thought was really funny when they were talking about this blue pill alpha, and I think it's important to point out that he does say that there's more blue pill alpha, that there's a lot of blue pill alphas. I mean, that's most alphas, right? Because most alphas are too busy being
being successful to bother
they
being
don't
successful.
Have time to circle jerk on the internet because they're out doing shit.
And they didn't need to learn pickup because they were already alpha, right? Basically, because of their various accomplishments. So he points out, and I also thought it was really funny that there's lots of red pill betas, right? There's lots of, I mean, that is for sure.
Fuck yeah.
In fact, probably most red pillers are betas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, especially if they identify as being red pill, like they're almost definitely betas. Because, you know, if you're alpha, you're busy. You're doing shit. You don't have time to be, you know, on the internet circle jerking with everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay, so
there was one thing that he said as a part of this discussion that I want to.
Is this about the Dan Bilzerian?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Were you gonna?
I was.
Oh,
but
okay.
You can.
Yeah. So anyway, he was talking about this blue pill alpha concept, and he was saying that Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, he was saying, well, you know,
and largest shareholder.
Yeah, and I guess Jeff Bezos is currently the richest man in the world at the time of this recording, I believe.
Oh, actually, I think it's now Elon Musk.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Wait, no. He's just wealthier than Warren Buffett.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if he's actually, but anyway, the point is when I checked,
one of them is a beta. Clearly,
yeah, they're all betas. They're all blue. Yeah,
we don't know which one is more beta, but one of them.
They're all blue pills, and one of them's a beta. But anyway, so I remember I looked up a couple weeks ago. I checked Jeff Bezos' Amazon or Wikipedia page, and he was at that point the richest man in the world. So anyway, he's clearly so. Rollo Tomassi.
Him and Elon jockeying for beta.
for who's the
blue pill beta.
Yeah. So anyway, Rollo Tomassi was like, Jeff Bezos has he's got all this money. If he want to live like Dan Bilzerian tomorrow, he could, but he doesn't. Why doesn't he do that? Because he's blue pill.
His blue pill mindset.
Jeff Bezos can live, if he chose to, like Dan Bilzerian tomorrow if he wanted to. Did I say his name right again? He could, but he chooses not to. Why? Why does he choose not to? Because he's blue pill. Because that's just what Bezos is comfortable with. That's what Bezos wants to be seduced by a predatory female, Lauren Sanchez, Dirty Sanchez.
And it's like I don't even know, how are you that dumb? Does he actually believe this shit? And that's another thing, I know a lot of people won't like me trash talking this guy, but that fucking guy, it's like, how could you believe that? How could you believe that?
Bro, clearly everybody would want to be, what is it? Everybody would want to be having heart attacks while banging chicks on Viagra because they'd been using cocaine like Dan Bilzerian does.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's the way to live.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to live that way, then you're beta.
Yeah. And it's like, well, maybe Jeff Bezos is just too busy running fucking Amazon and making a lot more money than you, Rollo Tomassi.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, clearly if Jeff Bezos wanted to bang more girls, he would have done that. He wanted to amass the fortune that he has amassed. That was more important to him.
Right.
And this is the part of the problem is that people like Rollo Tomassi and the his followers, the sheep, they're all they think that being red pill and living in alignment with the red pill kind of value structure is the highest peak of human achievement. And it's dude, you're just wrong.
Right. Yeah, I really agree with that. I mean, the whole point is not to the goal isn't to become an alpha male. The goal is to have the life you want. And I used to say this a lot in my boot camps where it's the goal isn't to make everybody into a super amazing PUA. The goal is whatever that guy wants to have for him to have it. If it requires that he become an amazing PUA, then that's great. And if it doesn't, that's great too. I mean, this is the way that he's saying it about Jeff Bezos and Dan Bilzerian. That's our buddy who lives nearby who spends 12 hours in the gym lifting weights. It's well, I'm sure if he lifted weights at the gym for 5 hours instead of 12 hours, probably that wouldn't affect his ability to get girls. But he still lifts weight more because he spends more time in the gym because he wants to. That's something that he likes doing, so he does it.
Yeah.
And it's not just about trying to be more alpha than somebody else. It's just he likes doing that, so he does it.
And yeah, this idea that, you know, you have to, there's like only one way to live life or one value structure that you should follow it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Kane.
It is kind of the same thing we were saying before, though, where these people probably feel disenfranchised in some way, and they want a simple explanation for how things work, so they can feel better about it. So then they buy into this like ideology of black, white, red, blue,
right,
etc., etc. And I mean, with Will Smith, fuck knows, right? But he's got, what, 2 kids? I believe a son and a daughter.
At least.
I mean, it's not much of a stretch to imagine that he didn't want to fuck up his entire family and mess up his kids and all sorts of stuff.
Well, if it was Rollo Tomassi, he would have left. That's what he said. He wouldn't be in this situation.
People say this shit, but
Kane,
in the real world,
ask you to leave this blue pill beta mindset. This is a Red Pill Alpha podcast. That's why we're here with Red Pill Q.
Fucking Red Pill
I'm Young
Q.
Pill.
And Vast Pill.
Oh, shit. Did you guys hear about the God Pill?
Yeah, that's the Roosh V pill.
Oh God. Let's just not even go there.
Yeah. But anyway, you were saying, I agree with you, Kane. You know, yeah, there's a lot of stuff at stake.
Right.
And if he just like, you know, is like, all right, fuck you to his wife.
And it's so funny. And that's where like Rollo is like, oh, yeah, you know, this is the kind of thing where the guy says it's cheaper to keep her. It's like, well, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is fucking cheaper to keep her.
There was one part in the interview that like,
actually, let's explain, because we actually never explained exactly what happened.
Okay.
So Will Smith and Jada Pinckett-Smith.
Yeah, this is a, if you go watch,
we'll explain about the hyphen later, because it's also really funny that it's emphasized so heavily. But basically, so they sat down to talk about it so that she could explain, you know, what happened. So it seems that the guy that she cheated with, although I'm not even sure. Anyway, the guy she banged
4 years
You're right.
ago,
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And they were taking Will Smith and Jada Pinckett-Smith were taking a break.
Right. They were separated. And according to the video, Will Smith was done with her ass. He had kicked her to the curb.
And we decided.
I was done with your ass.
Yeah, you kicked me to the curb.
I was done with you.
Yeah.
Marriages have that, though.
Yeah,
Marriages have that.
Yeah, we basically, we broke up.
We decided that we were going to separate for a period of time, and you go figure out how to make yourself happy, and I'll figure out how to make myself happy.
Well, at that particular point in time, it was indefinite.
Yeah, I really felt like we could be over.
Okay, and they and didn't plan to get back together with her. That's what they say in the conversation.
And Jada Pinckett-Smith agrees with all of this. Will Smith says it, and she's like, yeah, right. Yeah. So that's the context.
And then this guy who she slept with was their son's friend, and I guess for whatever reason they were like really involved with him at that time because he had some health issues, and so she was really like taking care of him, and I guess both of them were. But anyway, and then so that's how she got close to him and ended up banging him, or just we don't really know how it went down. We don't know if he made a move on her or she made a move on him. We have no idea. But basically, so if the story is, and then Will Smith, and then she and Will Smith sort of got back together, whatever that means, because we don't even know what that means. It's kind of weird to me. It's super weird that there's this idea in and I think this is what I was saying earlier about how in the red pill community they have like this really they have this mindset of they want the traditional roles from, you know, the 1950s to stay with us, and that's when things were really great. Although Rollo Tomassi wouldn't have been able to have that ponytail back then. But anyway, and so they have this idea that, you know, the fact that Will sort of and her are, you know, back together, whatever back together means, I think for them, that means it fits into their regular, it fits back into the standard paradigm. So later on, in the end, he starts talking about how, well, you know, after she's fucked this alpha guy, right? You know, because now she's fucked the alpha guy, the guy more alpha than her guy. She would now, if she's banging Will Smith, she's going to be thinking about the other guy and feel bad that she's banging Will and not banging the other guy who's like the hot commodity. But who says Will is thinking about her when he's banging her? And who says Will's even banging her?
Yeah, or wants to bang her,
or wants to. So it's interesting that in the Western culture there's a very strict mindset that it's like the guy will want to bang his wife forever, and that's always the way it is, and that it's always women who have like the sexual power, and that they're always the ones turning the guys down. It's not the guys who don't want to, and that's just absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, any guy who's dated the same girl for a long period of time for, year, 2 years.
Well, I don't think that's incorrect to say, because blue pill guys often will end up in that situation. Like I was like that with my first girlfriend. I didn't get tired of banging her because I barely could. But that was the dynamic from the beginning, right?
Okay, well, then I should preface this by saying anyone who... I don't know. I mean, maybe it's wrong to say it this way, but I should say anyone who has their dating life together and they can run relationships well,
right? Yeah,
will eventually feel disinterested with having sex with the same girl on a long enough timeline. And this is very, as Jordan Peterson say, the literature is very clear on this. And this is one of the reasons why, if you listen to Jordan Peterson, he prescribes that you mix things up in your sex life to keep it interesting, because it's not just going to be interesting in and of itself to just have sex with the same person. And this goes for both people, for women and men.
Right.
It's just not going to do it on a long enough timeline.
Right.
Buy something sexy for your partner to wear, maybe multiple things.
Right.
And, there's this idea in the kind of the red pill, kind of red pill philosophy that, like you said, it's like women withholding this thing from men, and that's not really an accurate representation of what's actually happening.
Right. And so I thought it was really interesting because, he seems to disregard this entire aspect of the fact that they were separated. And he seems to be saying, well, yeah, they were separated, but Will Smith is still has to be jealous or has to feel jealousy. And that's just definitely not true. So, they may have decided to stay together, but once again, we don't know what stay together means. We really don't. And I think that's so important to understand. It's that maybe they never bang. Maybe they sleep in separate rooms. Maybe they go, and because the reason why they're talking about this, this happened 4.5 years ago. Now and there's a lot of criticism or commentary on the fact that Will Smith looks really sad or upset.
Is so funny.
And it's like, okay, if this shit happened 4 years ago, I'm sure he's not fucking sad about that shit now.
Yeah, it's like maybe Will Smith is just fucking pissed that he has to do this interview.
Yeah.
He has to waste time because everyone cares about this shit that happened 4 years ago for some reason.
Right.
I mean, it's like that's probably why he's like, oh Jesus, we got to do this.
Yeah. And the fact that
why?
Go ahead, Ken. Sorry.
Why did he have to do this interview?
So what happened is that I guess somehow, so I'm not really sure 100%, but somehow it came out that this happened, and I think it might have come out because that guy, the guy she cheated, the other guy, August Alsina, Alsina. Anyway, something like that. He did an interview, I think, recently.
One of the funniest parts about this is no one knows that guy's name, but they all know Will Smith's name. And they're like, that guy's the alpha. It's like, well, Will Smith has been a household name for 20 years.
Right. Yeah.
30 years. So
this August Alsina guy, I think he did an interview recently, and I think he mentioned it. I'm not sure, though, if that's how it came out. That might have been how it came out. But in any case, somehow it came out that this happened, and then the internet started talking about it.
And they were saying Will Smith said this and Jada Pinckett-Smith said this.
Right.
And, and then they were like, okay, well, we
should come out and say something so that, to basically deal with this, stupid internet.
Yeah.
Trending bullshit about us, essentially. Yeah. So that's why they felt they needed to come out and say something. So... Yeah, so I thought
that though, the thing you were just talking about with how they were like, oh, Will Smith looks really sad, look at him, and I think this was really disturbing to me because Rollo Tomassi does this throughout his breakdown. He's like, look at him, look at how he looks. And there's like one point where he's like, does anyone else feel like this is really cringy? Yeah. Does anyone else feel like I'm not saying it, just like you're feeling. Like, does anyone else feel that?
Boy, that's cringy. Like, I love it when people tell me like something, oh God, that's so cringy. I can't watch it.
Way, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, no, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're blowing it way out of proportion is what's going on. and it's like, I mean, great NLP.
Yeah.
Great
sure.
NLP. Like, I'll give him that. He's definitely a good orator, and he's good at NLP.
Yeah.
Because he's really good at like making you think that you think these things.
Right.
But yeah,
I also was like that. I was like, not really.
Yeah.
I was just like, what's cringy about this? It's like, I was like, yeah, look, I mean, Will's, they're in this embarrassing situation where they're talking about what everyone thinks is infidelity on the, talking about it openly on the internet. Who wouldn't be uncomfortable in this situation?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to talk about a lot of my sexual adventures that didn't go the way I wanted them to go.
Yeah, seriously.
On the internet.
Yeah.
And I'm not even, and no one would even watch it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's really, So, I mean, I thought it was probably more about that. Because, I mean, 4.5 years later,
why, who cares?
Yeah, why would
Especially
he fucking
if you're
care?
Will Smith. It's like how many movies has he done since then? It's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, right. He did Aladdin.
Yeah.
Since then.
Yeah.
For example. So, yeah. So it's really, So I thought that was pretty like. There was a couple of, let me think. What else did he say that I thought was, he really did like a lot of like framing of what was happening, and him being Rollo Tomassi, and it's not, and I was just like, well, maybe, I guess it's possible, but I don't think you have enough real evidence to say that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
And what seemed to really be happening is he has this, red pill ideology, and it's like, okay, this is how this red pill ideology would interpret these things. And it's like, it's this rigid perspective. It's just like how feminists see, or not even beyond. Let's go beyond feminists. One of the how people on the left, and I know this isn't a political show by any means. I mean, it's a politically incorrect show. That's definitely true, but it's not a political show. But there's this idea that all social relationships in America, especially, are about power, and because it's about power, anyone who's not getting what they want must be being oppressed by somebody else. And, and I think that that's kind of the same, in the same way that, so then, they say, okay, well, feminists are being, women are being oppressed by men. That's why they're not getting everything they want. And it's, every minority is being oppressed, and transgenders are being oppressed. And it's like, all these, and it's always about power. It's all because they don't have power. It's because there's not enough women in the boardrooms, and that's why women are being oppressed. And it's like, well, actually, that's probably not exactly. There's so many other factors. It's like, well, you can't use one lens to analyze every situation. So I really felt like he was kind of fitting this red pill philosophy or ideology onto the situation.
Yeah, and he was really he was pushing his narrative super hard, and
right.
He was good at it. He was doing a pretty good job. I mean, it's like to watch. Like, I understand why guys would watch that and they'd get really into it. But I think this is why you have to be very, very careful about how you consume information and be very critical of the information you consume.
Right.
And don't just listen to this dude. It's like,
yeah, I think the critical thing is the most important thing, because just like, just like Kane was saying, he reads like the MGTOW forums. It's not because Kane is MGTOW.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's good to know what people think and how, and to expose yourself to other ideas, but also be critical of them, challenge them.
Yeah, absolutely. And
not gonna lie, the whole MGTOW forum thing is pretty cringe. There's some stuff that is like, no, you're like, yeah, some like guy who has found some success in his life in some way. It's like, yeah, it's kind of, what's the word for that? It's wholesome. It's like, yeah, it's fine. But then there's some people who are like, oh, I'm against the PUAs. Look how good I am. And it's like, well, what are you even doing? And then
Yeah.
there's the other people who are just like, oh, women are the devil, women are bad. And you're like, well,
Yeah.
he obviously ain't touching no titties. So that's why he thinks like that. So,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, it's just cringy. I read it because I think I have to like figure some stuff out about other people. But
Yeah, I think it's really important to be aware of what's going on, in like, so we're operating kind of in the pickup community, let's say, but it's important to know what's going on in all these other communities because it's all related.
Right.
And it makes up what is mainstream thought. And what people are thinking about, what people are consuming, and you have to know that stuff if you're going to help them.
And so one of the things that I found disturbing about this was that there were so many assumptions about what Will Smith should want or should be doing, and I think that's kind of one of the problems is that he assumes that it shouldn't be okay for her to bang some other dude because if you're married you wouldn't want that, obviously, right? That's his kind of framework, and he doesn't understand that maybe Will Smith just doesn't fucking care. He's just like, yeah. I mean, he doesn't want it to be public, obviously, but but maybe he just didn't fucking care. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, if you want to fuck whatever, go ahead. And then there was a lot of analysis that he was making about how she was the dominant person in the relationship, and. I didn't read a lot of like what the internet is saying about them, but there is we have there are probably two mainstream narratives about this. One is, she's really bad, she shouldn't have done this. And the other is, Will is a beta cuck, right? Those are like probably the two dominant positions that people are taking on this. And, and based on the information they gave, neither of those things is true because, it says that Will Smith was done with her and then, she banged somebody else. So it's like, okay, well, if you're just done with your woman and she goes and bangs other dudes.
I mean, you're expecting that to happen.
Right. Maybe you want that to happen.
Yeah. You're like, I think it'd be good for her to get some dick.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been banging her. Maybe that's what's going on.
So there's that part. And then on the other side, it's like, well, if that really did happen, she probably does feel pretty bad at her age, and was happy that like somebody who was like young and hot wanted to fuck her. Like, I mean, we know plenty of guys who are that age who are really happy when, a 20-something-year-old wants to fuck them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty happy when a 21-year-old something wants to fuck me. So.
And I think that's really what the discussion, what you just said is like what the discussion should really be about is, there's this whole, the narrative is basically like Will Smith got taken advantage of. He was the beta, she did all this stuff. Women are bad. And, talking about this and like, actually the most interesting thing about this whole situation is if it was reversed and it was Will Smith who slept with some 20-something who was his kid's, his
daughter's friend.
Yeah. That he would be done.
Right.
He would be wrecked. But for Jada Pinckett-Smith, it's like, it's not a big deal. Everyone's just like, you go, girl, do your thing. You got to heal. That's right. Great. And I think that's actually the interesting thing about this is that if it was flipped, he wouldn't be treated the same way she's treated.
Yeah.
And that's not about Will Smith.
Maybe that's why Will was all upset.
Yeah, right? Maybe.
He was like, man, this shit is totally going to fucking work.
Yeah. Because
God damn it.
Yeah. Because to me, it's not about how she acted or how Will Smith acted. It's about how everyone's responding to it.
Right.
That's the problem. Is like, that's really the issue. Is that you guys should be, as like everyone should be looking at this and actually going, wait, well, doesn't this say something weird about how we interpret these events?
Right.
And shouldn't we maybe think about that? Yeah. But of course, everyone's just like, beta cuck.
Yeah, I that to me also I think is, and I will say that Rollo Tomassi does bring that up, but it's a very minor point. Yeah. I mean, it's not, he's mostly focused on, how women are whatever, and Will Smith doesn't have his shit together, instead of just being focused on how it's really unfair, because that's really what it should be. It should really be about how unfair and ridiculous it is that this double standard exists, and how if you listen to what they give as the reasons, those are very valid psychological problems to face. You know, it's like, okay, I'm old and unattractive, maybe. Or I feel I'm old. I am old and I feel unattractive. Okay, that's reasonable. Things aren't going well with my primary partner. Okay, that's also reasonable. That happens. I was able to bang this younger, hotter person. Okay, well, who wouldn't want to do that anyway?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, whether you're married or single or whatever, I mean, people want to bang younger and hotter. So that's also very valid. And, you know, now the language around it that she was using, you know, I felt like I had a lot of pain. I felt like I needed to heal. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to like have, I think those are the main things. It's like, those are all, people, you know, I mean, every in the pickup community since the beginning, if a guy was really into a girl and this girl wasn't really into him and he was feeling pain about that, it was always like go and bang 20 other chicks. That was always the prescription.
Yeah.
And so that's just all of this stuff is really normal and makes sense from the human perspective. And the issue is that as a woman, she can get away with it, and that, that she can get away with it in the sense that society accepts it. I mean, I don't think that.
And I think, you know, society should accept that as valid reasons.
Right.
But it's just that they should also accept it for men.
Right.
Who have those same reasons, because guys do have those reasons.
Right. Absolutely. Right. I mean, there's no shortage of men who feel that they're not being treated well by their wives.
Yeah.
And, you know, and this goes back to, this reminds me of, what was that? Crazy Stupid Love. Did you watch that?
We watched it together, remember?
Oh, okay.
We went to see it we went to the private movie theater.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we watched it together, but I've seen it twice actually. I watched it when it came out too.
And in Crazy Stupid Love, you know, this guy is if you haven't seen it, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but you know, you could go watch it. It's kind of like a pickup movie, but not really.
Yeah, it's like a fun movie to watch.
Yeah, it's like a pickup movie in the way that Hitch is a pickup movie. Where it's not really about pickup. But anyway, so in the movie, essentially, and I'm not going to give spoilers. Yeah, there won't be any spoilers from the story of the movie. So you're all good to listen, to continue to listen. Is that essentially there's this guy who is married and his wife cheats on him, and he's devastated by the fact that his wife cheats on him. And then, you know, she kind of wants to talk about it and she feels kind of bad about it, but you know, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe you fucking did that. And he's like, yeah, I can't fucking deal with this. And he moves out. Okay, fair enough, right? And then basically he goes out and starts dating again. And then when he does get something and his ex-wife finds out that he got something, he had sex with another girl who is like younger. And when his wife, who he's separated from, finds out, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And she's all like upset that the dad like banged somebody else. And it's like, well, like you guys were separated and he was definitely feeling really fucking bad about himself. And, you know, he thought that everything was going really well in the marriage. And the way he found out it wasn't was when you fucking told him that you banged some other dude. So, yeah, of course his feelings are really hurt. His pride is really hurt. And so, you know, he went out to date again. And he felt, you know, and he was really happy when he was able to get some action. And the whole thing is that, you know, they make her kind of look like the victim in the movie, which I was like, what the fuck? Like, how is she the victim? Like, she's the one who's like fucking shit up. But that was the whole thing. And that's the problem is that even in this circumstance, he's still portrayed as the victim because, and you know, I think the idea is that the reason he's portrayed as the victim still is because as the man, he's supposed to run the relationship, the marriage well enough that the wife doesn't want to bang somebody else. But, you know, the fact is that people people fuck up. Women fuck up, men fuck up, people fuck up. And it's like, well, if that's the case, then why is it okay for women to fuck up, but it's not okay for men to fuck up? It's like, if men do it, it's like, he's canceled.
Yeah. Another interesting example of this, and I agree, the discussion of the narrative that men are bad, women are good, and all that is a big thing that should be discussed, but it won't matter. And I'd say this is even more important than the Will Smith one, is the Johnny Depp one. So,
and he talks about that a little bit too.
Yeah.
Well, I love Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm a big fan. I don't think they've improved. I think the first and second one was good. I think the last one was kind of trash. However, Johnny Depp being cancelled because of that, and then after that, all the Me Too shit, and then after that coming out with it being the chick was the abuser and good old Johnny was just being good old Johnny. That's really sad. That's really fucked up.
Yeah, can you briefly explain? Because I don't really know the details. The only thing that I know is that that previously, or that Johnny Depp is known as having a history of like beating women. That's all I know.
So as far as I remember from this, Amber Heard came out and like got on the bus of the Me Too movement, and then was stating that Johnny had beaten her and done a whole bunch of other abusive stuff to her. And then the Me Too movement picked this up because they love a good story and they wanted to attack everyone in Hollywood, I guess. Mm-hmm. So that got Disney to cancel Johnny's contract, and there's all this other shit that went down, and he lost on everything. His career was basically done. And then a long time later, there was some evidence that came out that gave him an advantage, where he started to countersue her. That showed that she had bitten off like part of his finger. She was like regularly beating him and drugging him and just doing all sorts of really, really fucked up shit to him. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's just mind blowing. So the situation is still that his career is kind of ruined.
Beta.
The Me Too movement had to kind of cool their jets and slow their roll because, I mean, some of their biggest icons, I guess, were exposed as being fucking scum.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not the women's fault because they're with beta males.
What were they supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, how would you react if you were with Johnny Depp?
Yeah, what a blue pill beta.
Well, that happens.
So, I think that this and so this is where I think one of the things is that this standard set of things that the society thinks guys should want or that women should want. I think that the idea from my perspective, and they used to say this about Bill Clinton back in the day, about how the reason, he was always cheating on Hillary is because, like, who would want to bang Hillary, right? That's what they were all saying. And they basically said, him being with her was like a political move. And so it was because it would advance his career. And so it's interesting that, that was in like the 90s, right? So maybe the culture has shifted to such an extent that, that can't be a valid reason. And I guess they're saying in Will Smith's case, it's not because, he didn't need her to advance his career. The other thing that he was saying, and it's so funny because it's just like, wow, it's just like you could really stretch so much with so little information. So, they have this concept of the alpha widow. Do you know this?
I know.
Okay.
I don't remember what this is.
So the alpha widow is basically when, so the idea here is that a woman will like try and like lock down an alpha, and then when she fails, she'll like take this beta guy, and then, the beta guy will get treated really badly. That's kind of the idea. And so he's like, oh yeah, Jada is like Tupac's alpha widow. And so Will Smith was like the backup guy that she got.
Was she actually with?
I don't really know. I only know from what they were saying here.
is there any science behind this, or is it just like
No, that's
just
what's
retarded
actually
navel gazing.
disturbing about it is that this guy. I mean, how long is that? The video is like 3 hours, right?
Yeah, it's like 2 hours and 48 minutes. Or something.
Yeah, it's like, and he just keeps fucking talking. Like, he just keeps talking, and there's like not much substance behind what he's saying. It's like all inference about, about nothing, basically. He's just like making all these calls about Will Smith's life, and it's like, dude, you don't know anything about what it's like to be Will Smith. And it's like so shocking to me that...
Well, no, because he's not blue pill.
Yeah, right. He's not blue pill. And that was another thing, like his framing. I mean, really, like I said, great NLP. His framing was so good because he's like, Will Smith didn't have guys like me to teach him. It's like, Will Smith doesn't need a fucking guy like you. That's why he was famous before you were around. So it's just a little bit disturbing that someone can be so famous on the internet and basically have not much substance behind what they're talking about.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I get it. Rollo Tomassi wrote a bunch of stuff on his blog and he has his book and people really like his book, but it's like...
Yeah, for me, what's interesting is that, the fact that it's just a and this is where, the Jordan Peterson, and actually this is kind of worth watching. There's this Jordan Peterson, if you look up Jordan Peterson ideological possession on YouTube, you could see a video where he talks about how that someone is ideologically possessed because what they're going to say.
Yeah.
And because in the case of everything Rollo Tomassi says, it's like, yeah, that's what he would say given that he has these beliefs or claims to have these beliefs, right? That he has. And I think that one of the things why it's so appealing to guys is because you can just take this set of precepts and then you could just look at the world and go, oh yeah, and everyone everyone else who's also red pill will agree with you.
Right, you just retrofit everything.
Right. And so you have like this you automatically create a community of people that just agree with you on everything.
Yeah. I was thinking a lot about I don't know if anyone who's listening to this is old enough to remember the website Something Awful, but it was like one of these early internet culture sites, and the tagline of Something Awful was "The internet makes you dumb." And I think that's just gotten more and more true because you can cut yourself off. Like I was saying before, you can cut yourself off. Yeah. You can cut yourself off from all the kind of counter evidence to something.
Right.
And it does really dumb you down.
It can.
Yeah, it can. It can. If you don't actively expose yourself to alternative viewpoints, it really can. And I think that's the most disturbing thing. Like I was talking to Martin last night about this. We were watching some of this video, and it's out of all the shit on the internet, this is what people want to watch. And that's by far his biggest video on his channel. Yeah. 170,000 views.
Yeah.
It's why are you guys watching 3 hours of, how much stuff you could do in 3 hours? Mm-hmm. It's a lot of time.
Yeah. That's why I was working out when I listened to it.
Yeah. It's just, it's shocking to me. And I don't know. Maybe I'm alone in being so disturbed and weirded out by this.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things is that we live in Asia, and I think that has a big effect because we're kind of because it's funny. He also talks about this, how they're trying to export all of these beliefs to other countries and things, and it's that's not going to happen because they because the structure of the societies is so different. Japan is a classic example where feminists are really distressed that feminism hasn't taken hold in Japan because Japanese women are clearly oppressed. And it's they think that because they think that the experience of women in the West is similar to the experience of women in Asia, but it's just really not in a myriad of ways. For example, mate selection is very different, where they don't have this, much more recently. And even today, they still do a lot of arranged marriages or semi-arranged marriages. And so it's not about the love thing in the way that it is in the West. So that already changes the relationship dynamic where people don't have the same possessive feelings about their spouse, and especially the male if he's going and banging elsewhere. It's like, what difference does that make? You know, he's locked into this familial situation. So as an example, people don't probably know this, but in Asia, and I think this is all Asian countries, but I know it's true for Japan, and it's true for Korea. They have what's called a family register, and the family register is some kind of document that tracks everyone in your family. So it's like it's tracked by the government, like who you married, when, who you divorced, and it's all in like a central document. So, you know, you can go back and you can see the sordid past of your ancestors by looking at this document. And so there's much more a sense of this being a continuation of a kind of legacy, and it's not, marriage isn't about just, you know, two people falling in love. And so because of that, they don't really see extramarital sex as being the same thing. And pretty typically for women too, if they're married and they've already had kids with their husband, then it's also relatively okay for them to go and bang other dudes, and it's not a big deal, because in terms of what they're trying to do on the family side, that's being taken care of. So who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that in Japan and in Korea as well, it's very typical that even if, or maybe especially if, the wife doesn't work, she is the money manager. So the guy goes out and makes the money, and that money is, all of it is given to his wife, who then distributes that money, whether, you know, paying for the bills, giving him an allowance for him to like do whatever he wants to do, you know, with his money. And so there isn't this situation in the West where women felt they needed to work, otherwise they wouldn't have a say in financial matters. Because in the West, that's kind of the setup. The guy's like, oh, well, I make the money, so I get to decide. But in Asia, because it's like a family thing, and the woman is the one who's sort of in charge of the management of the daily family things, she had control over the money.
And I think this is one of those things where when feminists in the West, they look at Japan and they're like, Japanese women are oppressed, they're so submissive to these men, and it's like, that's not what's happening. And the people who say that don't know anything about Japan.
Right.
And I think this is really common in America. I mean, Americans just don't, by and large, they don't know what other cultures are like.
Yeah.
Because they don't willingly expose themselves to those cultures.
Right.
So it's like, you know, everything they know about Japan is what they read on the internet.
Right. And this is the kind of stuff that isn't discussed.
Yeah, exactly. You would have to be in Japan or know Japanese people. And I don't mean Japanese people abroad, because those aren't Japanese people. I mean Japanese people in Japan who live a Japanese lifestyle to know about this stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, once you live in Japan and you see how well Japan operates, you're like, oh, well, they don't really need to do any of this crazy shit that they're doing in the West, because everything operates pretty well and women get what they want. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty harmonious.
Right. And you could use, and I think you could use Thailand as another pretty good example of this. Because, you know, what happens in Thailand very commonly, especially in the countryside, is women often have kids really at a young age. And it's kind of like, you know, they fall in love with some guy when they're like 16 or 17 or whatever, and they bang him, and then, you know, they have this kid, and it doesn't work out because the guy is also pretty young, and, you know, they're both fucking dumb. But it doesn't really matter, because they have like this family structure, and their parents are still pretty young, and so the parents just like raise the kid, and then she just like goes and works, and, you know, and she can go and visit her kids when she wants, and she works and whatever, and it's like a pretty good structure. Now in the West, we would think, oh, this is really terrible, oh, these single moms are having all these problems. It's like, well, no, because the social structure is totally different.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of set up to handle that so that it doesn't get out of control, whereas in America it's not.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, this idea of being a single mother in America is actually a problem, because the society is not set up that way. And I think one of the reasons it's not set up very well, and this is just a general problem with America, is that there's not a lot of tradition in America, because there's a new country. Mm-hmm. And this is another problem with like the whole red pill thing, is that their idea of the best society is like the 1950s. And that's like traditional. It's like, that's not traditional in any other country.
Right.
And that's part of the problem, is that they're looking at this relatively new setup as being like the kind of be all end all.
Right. Well, and another part of it is also the long distances in America where people live really
that's
far
true.
away. Because, you know, in Thailand, like at most you live like 10 hours away by like car or something. So you can like go and visit, you know, pretty easily. And that is another factor. But the fact is that is in the realm of human experience and even modern times, that's pretty rare. I mean, I think probably there's only a few countries that are like that. Maybe China is like that, where people have to, you know, travel long distances to see their family. But that's a relatively new phenomena as the coasts have become increasingly developed. You have that maybe in Russia, because there's like so much land that's not very developed, but, you know, where they're extracting resources, and so people might live out there in those regions. But for the most part, you know, people tend to live closer to their family than because the countries are smaller, so they tend to live closer to their family. And so this is, you know, like in Japan as another example, it's very typical that when women give birth, that they stay with their mothers, or their mothers come and stay with them. Either way, and so they're the kind of the unit that's like taking care of the infant, you know, for the first 6 months or something like that. So they have a lot more family support as they're doing it, and you know, and thank God for that, because the guys have to work like 10 hours a day, right? So you know, they don't, and so they don't need to have they don't need to have maternity leave, because the woman can just quit and just do that and still get all of her husband's money anyway.
And is also kind of expected to operate that way.
Right.
In Japan, you know, it's like in Japanese office culture, one of the most common things that you'll see play out is that women get jobs as like kind of in secretarial positions where they're kind of easily replaceable.
Right.
And they just find some guy at the company that they marry and they have kids with, and then she just stops working there, and they find some other young secretary to take her place, and the woman is just a stay-at-home mom, and everybody's happy, pretty much.
Right. Yeah.
Because she's like, well, I don't have to work. Great. You know?
Exactly.
It's like, why do you all want to work so much in the West? It's like, it's not.
Yeah. Well, it's because they don't get any money, and they don't get any money because that's the way the American culture is structured. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so, you know, you have these guys, you know, these red pillars who are like raging against the situation. And it's like, well, this is not about the nature of women. This is about the structure of life in the U.S. and how the genders have adapted to that structure. So it's really like an incorrect way to look at it, and to understand. And the reason why it's so important to understand that it's incorrect is to say that, hey, if you're a guy living in America or in the West, then you could arrange things differently by creating a different environment. That's really, from my perspective, the key point there.
Yeah.
And I understand, and this is where I do have some sympathy, and I think I mentioned this earlier, for, you know, those guys who have been burned by divorce and court custody and laws and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the legal system in America does really fuck guys hard, and I think that is an important part of this discussion that the manosphere guys are having.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. So that's the important aspect, but that's not about the nature of women. That's about the societal structure and about the legal system. And that's a totally different issue from, you know, can you have a decent relationship with a woman in America?
Yeah, and you really have to you just have to look at that and say, like, okay, well, what can I do to, if you're going to stay in America, what can I do to set my life up so it doesn't end up like this, and I can still be happy and I don't have to hate women? You know,
right?
And like, you know, like I said, if you find yourself just angry at women, it's probably doesn't have much to do with women. It's just that you haven't set your life up to operate well under those circumstances.
Well, you wouldn't
in that environment
if you're blue pill.
Yeah.
It's your blue pill mindset.
Sorry, Jeff Bezos. Sorry, Jeff Bezos.
So, and also what this brought to mind, that this kind of rigid mindsets of a lot of these manosphere groups, particularly Red Pill, MGTOW, and Incel, is the Gervais principle, which I know we've talked about before, but I don't know if we ever talked about on this podcast. But, you know, the Gervais principle, which Gervais as in Ricky Gervais, it's named after him because of it's based on the TV show The Office. And there was a really great series of essays on this website called Ribbon Farm by Venkatesh Rao. And essentially he says he's talking about this relatively old, like I think it's from the 1950s, like social hierarchy theory for company structures. And there's three groups. There's the sociopaths, psychopaths.
No,
sociopaths.
He calls them sociopaths.
Okay. Sociopaths, clueless, and losers.
Sociopath, clueless, and losers. And these are not, like, he doesn't mean sociopath in the clinical way that you would use sociopath.
Yeah. And he doesn't, in fact, none of those terms mean exactly what they mean in everyday usage. So the idea essentially is that, that the world, the cultures operate on kind of sets of unwritten rules. And what sociopaths do is they understand that you can play by different rules. And by understanding that, they come up with and create companies that exploit loopholes kind of in the rules. Okay, so, or it
could just be any organization. It doesn't have to be a company. Right.
It doesn't have to be a company, right? It can be any organization. So they exploit loopholes. But in this, and when he's talking about it in the essays, the series of essays, he's talking about in companies. And anyway, the important thing is that essentially sociopaths are the ones who run things. They run companies, they run, the government, whatever. They run things because they understand that you can manipulate you have many points of manipulation. They understand that you can negotiate things to be the way you want to. If you have something to offer, if you have something of value to offer, you can negotiate a better deal. And so they get a better deal. Then you have the clueless, who are, in the company context, they are kind of middle management, or he also calls them the employee of the month club. And it's like, these are the guys and the girls who play by all the rules and they try and do everything perfectly. And because of that, they do okay, but they can't make it to the top. And, I think everybody, most people have an understanding of this concept where, they get upset. They go, oh, I can't believe they were more successful than me when they didn't do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh, it's because of, and they make up some reasons why they weren't as effective as another person. So this would be, in the world of Rollo Tomassi, these would definitely be the blue pillars. But I mean, I think that's reasonable, and he would maybe say that, like, Dan Bilzerian would be like the sociopath. And I mean, I think you could kind of say that because essentially he's not nearly as wealthy as any of these other guys,
right?
But he's like been able to, because of his understanding of social media, he was able to leverage that to get like way more out of his money than most guys have been able to get out of their money, right? So he's basically living a similar life to like Leonardo DiCaprio,
right?
Except he didn't have to.
He manufactured it all.
Right,
himself.
He manufactured it all himself, and he didn't have to be nearly as skilled at anything,
right?
And he didn't have to, and it didn't take him like decades of hard work, developing a craft, networking, whatever. So you could say, okay, he's like a sociopath in this sense, and it's not a negative way to say it. He's just saying he was able to find some exploit and use that to sort of move up faster.
Yeah, exactly.
And then and then all of these like other, like most of the red pill guys, certainly the incels, certainly the MGTOW guys, all fall into the last category, which he calls losers. And losers doesn't mean that they're like losers in all aspects of life. In this context, it basically means that they don't derive meaning from working at this company. They don't care.
See it as pointless, like it's a rigged game, and they're like, well, there's no way that I could possibly
win.
In this game.
Yes.
So I'll just like opt out, kind of, and just talk shit.
Exactly. And their main imperative is to, make themselves feel good about the fact that they can't really win. And so, that's kind of, we also like to call them the verbal hand job club.
Yeah.
So a lot of these, and so I would say, a lot of these incel guys and red pill guys, and so, they can get props for analyzing something from the red pill perspective. And that's really great, rather than just fucking going out and finding the exploits, which is, I think, for me, more about what pickup artistry originally was about.
Yeah.
It's about like, I mean, that's really what it was. It was like all these nerds being like, oh shit, I'm getting chicks. It was like about being able to like, out game like the Chad. You're out at the club and you're like this big fucking nerd, and then you're able to like pull some hot girl that the Chad also wanted. The blue pill alpha.
Yeah.
You're able to snatch the puss from just under the blue pill alpha's nose, and that's what it was about before. So they had like this sociopath kind of perspective, and these blue pill alphas were like clueless, right? And so they could like figure out how to do that. And yeah, and I mean, that's definitely how I felt when I learned game. I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna get everything. Get everything.
As one of my friends said, yeah, I'm a nerd and I fuck bitches.
Hard.
I fuck hard.
Yeah. So I think that essay is really worth reading, and it's really worth reading from the perspective of understanding this idea that you can influence your environment. You don't have to be stuck in that environment and either say, okay, well, I think I'm good enough to play along with the environment, so I'll just do that, or to say, well, I'm not good enough to play along with it and succeed, so I'll just thumb my nose at it and say, well, I don't give a shit. And go and just do the minimum to get by. It's to understand that you have more levers at your disposal, and you can use them to improve your situation and ultimately get what you want.
Yeah, and it's really important. Again, I said this before, but like just want to stress this. Don't just read stuff and don't just consume stuff passively. You really need to be an active participant in making your life better. And if you don't do that, you will become bitter. And you will just like talk shit about other people on the internet, and you don't want to be like that.
Or other people who aren't on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. So you really I think again, it's fine to like to be exposed to some of this red pill stuff and MGTOW stuff, but as long as you're using it to make your situation better, like actually kind of chart a course for where you want to be in life, and like think about what your ideal life would look like, and then think about break it down like step by step, how would you get there. And that was what the the original pickup community was really about. Like, it was supposed to be empowering because you're able to realize, okay, this thing that I thought I had no control over, actually I have a very great degree of control over it. And as long as you kind of stick on that side of things, you'll be okay.
Yeah. So I don't think I have anything else to say about this. Do you have anything else you want to add, Kane?
Not really. I mean, I agree with everything you guys have said. I don't think that Will Smith is a beta in any sense of the word.
Well, you're right. He's a blue pill alpha.
Anyway, I don't think
so what you're trying to say is he's a
cuck. Very silly. Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Sure.
An alpha cuck. Wait, what?
So I think all of that is just as silly as all the retarded stuff that feminism these days brings up.
We have retarded team female and retarded team male.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us this time around, guys. If you want to make sure you know when the next one is out, subscribe to us on Stitcher or iTunes or SoundCloud or
our good old mailing list.
Or our mailing list. You can get on our mailing list.
Traditionalists who want a nuclear family, 1950s, get your email on the list.
Yeah, go to pickupasia.com and get on the email list so you know when this comes out. And we also put lots of other interesting stuff in there also. And and once the Corona times are over, then we'll be traveling around teaching you guys these exploits so that you can
get cucked.
So you can be a sociopath.
Yeah.
A red pill sociopath.
One thing I will ask. So, let's just say, what's the name of the dude who wrote
Rollo Tomassi.
Rollo. So he's kind of like the king of red pill, so to speak.
And what a kingdom!
So does he get any good?
He's married.
Is she any good?
I have no idea. I tried to find a picture, but I couldn't find a picture. I looked up Rollo Tomassi, and wife did come up, but when I clicked on the search, I didn't. No pictures came up.
Is it confirmed that he's actually married, or did you just search this?
I know he was married from his book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he makes it pretty clear he's married from his book.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that none of the rational male. It's kind of weird that there would be no pictures of his wife, considering he's like relatively well known.
Yeah. Because you would expect a bunch of people to shit talk him on the internet too, and be like, "Whoa, look at this whale."
For sure.
Yeah. So if you do a search for Rollo Tomassi wife or wife picture, oh wait, he left her.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So he's
maybe.
now.
Oh wait, what? Oh, maybe this is an interview with somebody else.
Oh yeah, it's case study.
Oh, it's a case study. Okay. So yeah, it's all pictures of other people.
Yeah, this is pretty funny.
And their wives, which I guess is because he's always talking about other people's wives.
Yeah, I mean, this is another thing, and I don't follow Rollo Tomassi enough to really know, but it's like I'm always disturbed when people make a living off of shit talking other people.
Well, he says it's not a takedown.
Critiquing, yeah.
Oh, here's a good one. Rollo Tomassi on Twitter. You don't marry a woman. You marry all the men.
Oh, God. Good God.
Sounds kind of gay.
Oh, and oh yeah, we didn't talk about the hyphenated thing. So he has this big thing, and I wouldn't say I entirely disagree with this. I do think there is some truth to it. But he basically, especially if you look at things from his perspective, but essentially what he's saying is that if a woman is hyphenating her name, then it means that she's not really that into the guy, and she's not really submitting in the way that she should as a wife and as is traditionally done. And that's like kind of one of his big, this is the traditional thing about how society has always worked by, women being submissive to men. And so the fact that she hyphenated her name is more evidence to show that she is, not really down with the Will Smith.
Yeah, I mean,
and he does say, people say, oh, career this or that's why or whatever. I don't really have a stance. I mean, my stance is,
are you getting what you want?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, are you getting what you want?
As the guy.
Yeah, probably just didn't fucking care.
Yeah.
And, and it's very possible from my perspective, it's like, okay, well, it seems like, I mean, exactly. And actually I wanted to talk about that. I forgot about that. We were supposed to end this, but I guess we're not yet. Lucky you guys. So this idea of, are you getting what you want? It's like, well, what do you want? And then are you getting it? And what do you have to give up in exchange for that? And that's all that really matters. Now, yeah, do people, and I think, do people not deliver on their end? Yeah, sometimes. And the idea is that if they don't deliver on their end, then you don't have to deliver on your end anymore either. And I think that's really the point. And it's in any deal that you do, it's about that. And so having that understanding, instead of just assuming that things are going to work out the way you think they should just because you want them to, that to me is really the problem. And I think that that's where a lot of these the red pillars and the MGTOW guys are all upset, because they just thought it should be automatic that you get X, Y, and Z, and they don't understand that it's not automatic. It's something you have to negotiate for all the time.
Yeah. And the main thing, like, I also, like, you don't really have a stance on the hyphenated name thing. I don't really, it's more about are you getting what you want?
Yeah.
But the reason
why does her name doesn't have to be hyphenated if I don't fucking marry her?
Yeah, but the reason I kept highlighting that as something that Rollo was doing that I think is really funny is that he kept drawing attention to this thing.
Yeah.
And it's like he was drawing attention to something that doesn't really fucking matter that much in this discussion. And he was like really like driving it hard. And it's just like another case where he was really pushing his frame instead of just being like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I would say it may matter, it may not matter. We don't.
Yeah,
we have no idea what the discussion was like at the time. Because if Will was just like, because I certainly know of situations where maybe they went to like they were like, okay, fine. Oh, I think she was already pregnant when they decided to get married.
Yeah,
and maybe they were like, oh, okay, well, let's go down to the courtroom and like get this marriage thing going. And they went there, and she's like, oh, what should I put my name down as? Yeah. Maybe she put like Jada Pinckett, and she's like, oh, right, and then she just put -Smith.
Yeah, I mean, you really just don't know, and this is like the thing. You always have to be really careful when you like watch other people critique things. It's like they probably don't know that much either.
Yeah,
I mean, the only person who really knows is Jada and Will.
Right. And I guess Augustine knows a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, he got a taste.
Yeah.
A 5-minute Google of Rollo, what's his face? He seems like a bit of a retard.
Yeah.
He does. If you go and look at his Instagram, there is not one picture of him with a chick.
Yeah, well,
Not one.
He's married, so.
Yeah, I'm with you, Kane. I think it's really strange that so many people would look up to this guy as like a role model. It's like, why don't you look up to Will Smith instead of like trash talking on the internet? Like, why don't you try to be more like him?
Well, this was part of the thing he was saying. He's like, oh, if you look at Will, you know, that's why you know that he's like not a beta, because if you like will look at his like things that he's put out, the movies he's been in, what when he talks, what he says. Yeah. But, too bad Will didn't have Rollo to help him out when he was coming up.
Yeah, I'm sure he needed it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Kane. It's really. I mean, I never knew what Rollo Tomassi looked like.
Yeah, I was
pretty shocked when I saw it.
Yeah,
for the first time.
Oh, and another article that we should link in the podcast that I think would be useful for guys to read is the myth of the modern day alpha male, myth of the middle class alpha male. Sorry. Yeah, that article I think goes really well with this, because I think definitely people in the red pill community, they don't really think about what being alpha is actually like. I don't mean in, because like the idea of alpha in like America is not what being a powerful man is like over the course of history or in the rest of the world. And that article really gives great context to what it's actually like to be alpha and what your life would look like and how you would actually behave as a real world alpha in like an environment that's actually dangerous. And I think that's part of the problem, is that you can kind of sit in America and you can critique all this stuff because America, at least the America that a lot of the red pill guys are in is not a dangerous
middle
place.
class America.
Yeah, it's not a dangerous place.
Right.
And so you don't really have real alpha guys.
Right.
Because you don't need them, because everything is so safe and secure.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's another thing that's really missing from this discussion.
This would be about the point where you would cue someone saying, "Fucking America!" and then shooting a bunch of guns and an eagle swoops down. And
have we ever done a podcast talking about the myth of middle class alpha male?
No, but we should. We probably should.
We've mentioned it a bunch.
Okay, why don't we do that next time? Because it's one of my favorite pieces
that. I think it's great.
Ever done on that came out of the pickup community.
Yeah, definitely.
So we can talk about it in detail. It'll be a much happier conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, well, thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll see you next time.